Centaur. The centaur is probably the most recognizable half-human creature in mythology, and for good reason. The image of a human torso rising from the body of a horse is one that has never really disappeared. In Greek tradition, most centaurs were exactly what that combination suggests: wild, violent, drunken, and impulsive. They crashed weddings, started fights, and functioned as embodiments of the animal side of human nature, given a body to match. There was one major exception. Chiron, son of the Titan Kronos, was everything the other centaurs were not: calm, intelligent, and regarded as one of the greatest teachers in myth. He instructed Achilles in warfare, Asclepius in medicine, and Heracles in more than one discipline. And he was also caught in one of mythology's more efficient ironies. Why, he was struck accidentally by one of Heracles' own poisoned arrows. Because Chiron was immortal, he could not die from the wound. He could only continue suffering. So he gave up his immortality voluntarily in order to escape the pain. The Centauromachy, the battle between the centaurs and the Lapiths, was carved into the metopes of the Parthenon, which tells you the Greeks considered this conflict foundational enough to place on their most important building. Minotaur. The Minotaur was born from a punishment, which somehow makes the whole thing worse. Poseidon sent King Minos of Crete a magnificent white bull, expecting it to be sacrificed in return. Minos kept it instead. Poseidon's answer was to make Queen Pasiphae desire the animal. The result was the Minotaur, a creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull, known in some sources as Asterion. Minos, predictably horrified, commissioned Daedalus to build the labyrinth, a maze so complex that even its creator could barely navigate it. Inside that structure, the Minotaur waited. Every 9 years, Athens was forced to send 7 young men and 7 young women into the maze as tribute. None of them came back out. That continued until Theseus volunteered to enter it himself. He succeeded partly through skill and partly through Ariadne's thread, an actual ball of string that allowed him to retrace his route through the maze. He killed the Minotaur at the center. The name itself is blunt. Minotaur simply means Bull of Minos, a very straightforward label for something that terrified an entire kingdom. Satyr and fawn satyrs are what happen when you give the party guests their own mythology. In Greek tradition, these half-human wilderness spirits were attached to the retinue of Dionysus, the god of wine, and were defined by indulgence, disruption, and permanent lack of restraint. They played reed pipes, drank constantly, and treated trouble as a full-time occupation. Their Roman counterparts, the fawns, were somewhat gentler in temperament, but essentially occupied the same role. The figure most closely associated with them is Pawn, not technically a satyr, but close enough that the distinction often collapses in later imagination. Pawn had full goat legs, horns, and the reed pipes that tradition says he invented himself. His name is often connected to the origin of the word, panic, though the etymology is not completely settled. Early Greek art did not always depict satyrs the way modern audiences expect. In many early representations, they had horsetails rather than goat legs, meaning the fully goat-like version became standard only later. They also appeared in a specific genre of Greek theater called satyr plays, which functioned as comic relief after tragedies, which is exactly where they belong. Harpy. The harpies began as wind spirits and ended as one of mythology's more efficient instruments of punishment. Their name in Greek means snatchers or swift robbers, which covers the essential mechanics immediately. They had the face and torso of a woman, combined with the wings and talons of a bird of prey. Their specific talent was the destruction of meals. King Phineus, so a prophet punished by Zeus for revealing too much of the future, was condemned to sit before food he could never eat. Every time a meal was brought to him, the harpies descended, stole part of it, and fouled the rest so thoroughly that it became inedible. He was kept alive and permanently starving. The Argonauts later drove the harpies off during their voyage, one of the rare cases in which anyone successfully dealt with them. Ancient sources preserve individual names, such as Aello, Ocypete, and Sileno. Early Greek art often represented them as beautiful winged women. The more overtly monstrous version came later, which is a pattern Greek mythology repeats more often than it should. Medusa is one of the 3 Gorgon sisters, and the only one who is mortal. Her sisters, Stheno and Euryalde, were immortal, which means they survived what happened next. According to Ovid's Metamorphoses, Medusa was originally a beautiful woman who was assaulted by Poseidon in Athena's temple. Athena responded by transforming her into a monster with living snakes for hair, and a gaze that turned anyone who looked directly at her into stone. Earlier, Greek sources are less sympathetic. In those, she was simply monstrous from the beginning. The tragic backstory is specifically Ovid's addition. Perseus killed her by looking only at her reflection in a polished bronze shield. When he cut off her head, 2 beings emerged from the blood: Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a giant warrior. The head retained its petrifying power even after separation. Perseus used it repeatedly as a weapon before it was finally placed on Athena's aegis, where it remained as a protective emblem. Even severed, it still functioned. Sphinx. The Greek Sphinx has very little in common with the Egyptian Sphinx beyond the shared name. The Egyptian version is male, wingless, and associated with royal authority. The Greek Sphinx is female, winged, and sent specifically to punish the city of Thebes. She settled near the gate and asked a single riddle of everyone who tried to pass. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? Everyone who failed to answer correctly was killed. The answer, of course, is a human being, crawling as an infant, walking upright in adulthood, and using a cane in old age. Oedipus solved the riddle. The Sphinx then threw herself off a cliff, suggesting that her continued existence depended entirely on the riddle remaining unanswered. She had the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and the head of a woman, a form that remains consistent across Greek art, regal and lethal at the same time. Mermaid and mermaids are one of the few mythological creatures that appear more or less independently across maritime cultures all over the world. That either says something about the human imagination or something about what sailors begin seeing after too much time at sea. The oldest known mermaid-like figure is Atargatis, an Assyrian goddess from around 1000 BCE, represented as a woman with a fishtail after diving into water in grief. European mermaids vary dramatically in moral alignment. Some fall in love with humans. Some grant wishes. And some lure sailors to drown. Melusine, the French variant, appears as a serpent or fish-tailed woman who marries a nobleman on one condition: he must never see her on Saturdays. He agrees. He fails. He watches her bathing, sees the transformed lower half of her body, and breaks the arrangement permanently. She becomes a serpent forever. The male counterpart appears in Greek mythology as Triton, a sea being associated with Poseidon, and represented as a merman whose conch shell can calm or raise the sea. Nymph Greek mythology contains more kinds of nymphs than most people realize. Naiads belong to fresh water, rivers, springs, and streams. Nereids are the 50 daughters of the sea god Nereus, with Thetis, mother of Achilles, as the most famous. Dryads are tied to individual trees, and in some accounts die when those trees are cut down, which makes woodcutting a surprisingly delicate theological act. Oreds belong to mountains. Oceanids belong to the great encircling ocean the Greeks believed surrounded the world. Most nymphs were not immortal in the absolute sense, but they were semi-divine and lived for extremely long spans of time. Echo is one of the best-known examples. She was cursed by Hera to repeat only the last word spoken to her and never initiate speech herself, punishment for distracting Hera while Zeus escaped. Nymphs blur the line between human and divine, less through body structure than through status and function. But because they are essentially human in form and constantly entangled with mortal men, they remain part of the half-human tradition. Arachne. Arachne was a mortal woman from Lydia whose problem was not lack of talent, but complete awareness of it. She was the finest weaver alive and said so publicly, claiming superiority over Athena herself. Athena arrived disguised as an old woman and gave her the opportunity to retract the claim. Arachne did not retract it, so they held a contest. Athena wove scenes of divine glory. Arachne wove scenes of the gods behaving badly. Zeus seducing mortals, Poseidon deceiving women, divine authority shown at its least dignified. According to Ovid, her work was flawless. Athena knew it. She destroyed the tapestry, struck Arachne with a shuttle, and Arachne hanged herself in shame. Athena then transformed her into a spider, either out of pity or to extend the punishment, depending on the version. In mythological terms, every spider descends from her. The modern word arachnid comes directly from her name, which means the story never really went away. Lamassu. The Lamassu stood at the gates of Assyrian palaces and cities as divine guardians, and they were designed to overwhelm immediately. They combine a human head, bearded and crowned, with the body of a winged bull or lion, bringing intelligence, strength, and divine force into a single structure. The detail that makes them especially impressive is technical. They are carved with 5 legs. From the front, the Lamassu stands still. From the side, it walks. The result is that the creature appears active from every viewing angle, as if there were no position from which it could be caught at rest. While famous examples from Nimrud were carved in the 9th century BCE under Ashur-nasir-pal II. Some survive in museums. Some were destroyed by ISIS in 2015, which is one very direct way of understanding what it means to erase a civilization's evidence of itself.